Welcome to our 8th episode of Your Money Life Coach on eRadio with me, Barbara Mandel. This is your weekly Wednesday inspiration to act and manage your money better. Today we are talking wills. Why should you have a will, and what parts of your will is really important? Let's start off by crashing the biggest myth about what happens when you do not have a will. When you die without a will, your assets will not go to the state. It will be distributed in terms of your family bloodlines in accordance with the Interstate Succession Act. If you're married and have children, they are first to inherit. Where you do not have a spouse or children, your parents are then considered, and if they are no longer alive, it follows to your brothers and sisters. People who were financially dependent on you also have a right against your estate. It is complicated and may cause fighting amongst your family. But the worst part is that an executor who is appointed by the government will administer and divide your assets. The second myth is that you have to have more than a certain amount of assets to have a will. This is simply not true, as our legislation allows for everyone, even if you just own your clothes, to have a will. Your will must, however, comply with certain minimum standards as set out in the Wills Act. This includes that you must have your will in writing and that every page needs to be signed by you. Your will also needs to be dated and witnessed by 2 competent witnesses. A competent witness is anyone over the age of 14 who's of sound mind and who does not inherit in terms of your will. Please bear in mind that should your will be disputed, the witnesses may be called to testify in a court of law. Now let's get to the important parts of your will. Conditions to inheritance. Most people want to add conditions to an inheritance, and often it is warranted. In some instances, however, this renders the will unexecutable. In other words, your estate will have to remain open for too long, and therefore some of your conditions will not be enforceable. Some conditions can be included as a standard clause in your will, such as the fact that any inheritance, in terms of your will, is excluded from matrimonial power. In other words, if someone inherits from your will and they are married in community of property, their spouse is not entitled to half of that asset or the growth of that asset in terms of the marital contract. The same applies to people who are married by antenuptial contract with accrual. The role of your executor. In terms of your will, you may appoint an executor. The executor is the person that will be responsible to ensure that your assets are distributed, that your debts and taxes are paid. It's often difficult and requires a lot of time. The Master of the High Court may also reject your executor appointment if they do not have the required skills. Therefore, it can be beneficial to appoint a professional trust company and negotiate the fees when you draft the will. By law, the maximum fee an executor may charge is 3.5% plus VAT, or in other words, 4.025% of the value of your assets. Your estate plan. Most people think that a will and an estate plan is exactly the same. It's not. An estate plan is a path to ensure that your assets are distributed according to your wishes, but in a cost-effective manner. The estate plan is the roadmap of which the will forms a part. Estate planning can be simple, but it can also be quite complex, especially where planning needs to be done for minor children or persons with disabilities. I often see that a person's estate plan head in one direction and their will in the entire different direction. Remember that your will is your final instruction, and when something does happen, your assets will be distributed according to the last will that you have signed. Taxes changes every year when the Minister of Finance delivers his budget speech. It thus remains vitally important that your estate plan is reviewed at least once a year. Lastly, safekeeping of your will. You must make sure that your original will is kept in a safe place, but more importantly, that your family knows where to find it. In most instances, I recommend that you have 2 signed original wills stored in different places. Some trust companies offer safekeeping of your will as a service and might be worth a consideration. A proper estate plan can help you save costs in wrapping up your estate. The simplest change can save you thousands, and it's therefore recommended that you contact a specialist to assist you with drafting your will. That's it for me today. Be sure to tune in next week Wednesday at 3:20 here on eRadio, where we'll be discussing important aspects of your tax. Feel free to follow me on Facebook, Your Money Life Coach, for more information on how to manage your money better. Or you can visit our website at www.yourmoneylifecoach.co.za. If you found this episode valuable, remember that all our episodes are available as a podcast on the eRadio website, where you can share with others. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to next week.